You didn't click on this by accident. Right now, something bigger than you, bigger than anything you faced, is drawing you in. This isn't just a video. It's a moment designed by the creator of the universe himself. And if you stay with me until the end, you'll discover why your struggle wasn't wasted, why the silence had purpose, and how everything you've endured was preparing you for a life of supernatural abundance. So hear me. This is not hype. This is not motivational fluff. This is a call, one that has echoed through eternity, finally reaching your ears, because for too long, you've carried pain in silence. You've worn strength like armor, even as you broke inside. You've pushed forward when no one was watching, fought unseen battles, and endured nights that felt endless. And now, heaven is responding. You feel it, don't you? That stirring in your spirit, that voice that's been whispering, there must be more. That's not your imagination. That's your spirit recognizing truth when it hears it. What you're about to receive isn't just encouragement. It's a divine activation. The same God who orchestrates galaxies, who paints sunsets without repeating a single one, has drawn you here to remind you, you were never forgotten. You were never overlooked. You were being prepared. There's a shift happening right now, a realignment of destiny. And if you dare believe, even just a little, that this message was meant for you, then what comes next will break the cycle you've been trapped in and release the future you've been waiting for. You've been walking with weights no one else could see, smiling in rooms where your soul was suffocating, paying the price of strength in silence, carrying burdens that were never meant to be yours. You've mastered the art of appearing okay, while your heart screamed for relief. But today, the invisible chains around your spirit begin to break. This is not just a comforting message. It is a heaven-issued decree. Your survival season ends now. Hear me clearly. You were not born to scrape by. You were not designed to live breathless, hustling just to stay afloat, trading your peace for pennies. You were never meant to beg life for the bare minimum. That tormenting cycle of barely making it, that constant sense that the breakthrough is always one step out of reach, it's not your identity. It's a prison built by lies. And the truth is here to set you free, because a God who saw you in the valley, who counted every tear you didn't cry out loud, who listened to your unspoken prayers in the middle of the night, that same God has not only heard, he's responded. This is not just about financial relief. This is about restoring your vision, reviving your joy, awakening your purpose. It's about taking you from battle mode to overflow, from barely holding on to walking in unshakable confidence. And here's what most people miss. Breakthrough doesn't always arrive with lightning and thunder. Sometimes it enters quietly, through a whisper that pierces deeper than a shout. And right now, these words are that whisper. Let them break the cycle. Let them pull you out of the shallow survival mode and thrust you into the deep waters of divine provision. You're not just getting through life anymore. You're stepping into life more abundantly. You feel it, don't you? Something inside you is waking up. There's a lie the world has fed you since childhood. That greatness belongs to others. That some people are simply meant to rise while the rest of us fight for scraps. But deep down, you've always known something didn't sit right with that story. Because something in you refuses to settle. Something in you knows, intuitively, instinctively, spiritually, that you were not created to survive. You were created to reign. You weren't formed in your mother's womb just to pay bills, feel exhausted, and die with your dreams still trapped inside you. No, you were carefully, intentionally, masterfully designed to overflow. Overflow is not just a concept. It's your original blueprint. And when I say overflow, I don't mean luxury or shallow success. I mean the kind of life where peace is your default setting, where your soul is not at war with itself, where provision flows without panic, where your presence unlocks breakthrough in the lives of others. But here's the problem. Most people are taught to shrink, to dim their light, to accept just enough as holy, to glorify lack and fear and call it humility. Let me be clear. There is nothing humble about suffocating the gifts God placed inside you. There is nothing spiritual about living in permanent burnout. There is nothing noble about struggling when God called you to overflow. The enemy of your soul doesn't fear your poverty. He fears your abundance. He fears the moment you realize what's inside of you. Because once you embrace your design, once you walk in that divine identity, you become dangerous to darkness. So now I ask you, what would your life look like if you fully stepped into the person you were created to be? What would happen if you stopped apologizing for your anointing? If you stopped downplaying your potential? You don't need permission to rise. Heaven already said yes. Let's expose it now. That voice that's been whispering to you in the quiet. The one that says, this is as good as it gets. That tells you not to expect too much, not to hope too hard, because disappointment is just around the corner. That voice is not wisdom. It's not realism. It's warfare. And it has one assignment, to rob you of everything God destined for you. Lack is not just a condition, it's a mindset. And for generations, it's been passed down like inheritance. Poverty of belief, scarcity of hope, a silent agreement with smallness, rooted in fear, coded in fake humility. But let's break that agreement now. You were never meant to live in fear of bills, dreading the future, bracing for impact at every turn. The God who knit galaxies into the night sky, who feeds sparrows and clothes lilies, did not forget to write provision into your story. You were not created to flinch every time your phone rings, wondering if it's more bad news. You were not made to calculate your dreams by your current bank balance. You are not the sum of your circumstances. You are the carrier of divine inheritance. But here's the enemy's strategy. He doesn't destroy you in one blow. He plants subtle doubts, whispers in the dark. Maybe I'm not meant for more. Maybe abundance is for others, not for me. And little by little, you begin to shrink yourself into survival when you were born to expand the kingdom. But you're waking up now, aren't you? You're starting to see that the war wasn't against your wallet. It was against your worth. Because if the enemy can keep you in lack, he can keep you distracted from purpose. He knows that a believer walking in overflow is a threat to the system of fear he built. So let's tear that lie down today. You are not forgotten. You are not meant to live small. And most of all, you're not disqualified. You don't have to earn what God already authored. You just have to agree with it. Stop measuring your future by the numbers in your bank account. Stop believing that your next breakthrough depends on a job title, a contract, or someone else's approval. Because the truth is both terrifying and liberating. Your source was never supposed to be human. The provision of heaven is not bound by market trends, inflation charts, or the limits of a man-made system. God doesn't check interest rates before he blesses you. He doesn't call meetings in heaven to discuss whether your boss likes you enough to give you a raise. He is the source. Always was. Always will be. When God sent manna to the Israelites in the desert, there was no grocery store, no supplier, no logistics chain, just open heaven and supernatural release. When Elijah was in hiding, God didn't send a king to feed him. He sent ravens, birds of the air, to bring bread and meat to a man marked by destiny. When Jesus stood before 5 loaves and 2 fish surrounded by 1,000 hungry people, he didn't look at what he lacked. He looked up. Because the moment you stop calculating your future based on what's in your hands and start aligning your faith with what's in God's heart, everything changes. You begin to understand that your job is not your provider. It's just a channel. And if that channel closes, heaven has others. Your Father owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. He owns the hills. He owns the sky above them. And the air you breathe is rented from his mercy. There is no drought in heaven, no recession, no supply chain disruption, only abundance. So stop shrinking your dreams to match your paycheck. Start expanding your faith to match his promises. Because when God becomes your source, lack becomes relevant. Don't confuse wealth with abundance. One can fill your wallet. The other fills your soul. Abundance isn't about driving luxury cars, flaunting branded clothes, or chasing applause in digital spaces. That's performance. That's noise. Abundance is quiet. It's sacred. It's powerful. It's the knowing, deep, unshakable, that you lack nothing because the giver lives inside of you. What good is $1 million account if you wake up with anxiety gnawing at your chest? What's the use of popularity if your peace is bankrupt? You can own properties in every city and still walk around with a spirit that feels like a wilderness. True abundance is waking up in stillness, not panic. It's going to bed without the weight of tomorrow crushing your ribs. It's being so anchored in purpose that rejection doesn't disorient you and failure doesn't define you. And it gets deeper. Abundance is the freedom to give without fearing lack, to bless others without calculation, to show up as yourself unfiltered, unafraid, because your worth isn't up for debate. It's already been sealed in heaven. When you walk in this kind of overflow, it spills into every room you enter. You become the answer to someone else's silent prayer. You become the river in someone else's drought, not because of what you own, but because of who you become. And here's what they won't tell you. This kind of abundance can't be faked. It's not manufactured through grind culture or self-help slogans. It's birthed in intimacy with the source. It's cultivated in a hidden place. It's the reward of those who refuse to trade their soul for applause. You are being called into that life now, not someday, not if everything works out. Now, let's be honest. Most people aren't living. They're surviving, not by choice, but by conditioning. Not because they're weak, but because they were never taught there was more. And the cruelest part? You can live your whole life in survival mode and still call it normal. Waking up already tired, saying yes when your spirit screams no, always one emergency away from collapse, smiling at church, breaking in private, and calling it faith. But let's name it for what it is. Bondage. The kind of bondage that's socially acceptable, applauded even. Work yourself to death, and they'll call you disciplined. Burn yourself out, and they'll call you strong. But God never designed you to survive on fumes. He never wrote a story where you had to earn every drop of peace through blood, sweat, and breakdowns. Survival mode may have helped you make it this far, but it was never meant to be your identity. It was a bridge, not a destination. And the tragedy? Many people build houses on that bridge. They settle into the exhaustion. decorate the struggle, get comfortable in the chaos, and call it just the way life is. But not you. Something inside you is starting to rebel. You feel it, the divine discontent, the whisper that says, there has to be more than this. And there is. But first you must confront the lie, that you were made to barely get by. That favor is for someone else. That peace is for someday. No, you were never meant to stay in Egypt. You're being called to cross the Red Sea. And if you refuse to settle, if you dare believe that survival is not your ceiling, then overflow will meet you in the wilderness. We need to be clear right now. God doesn't make suggestions. He doesn't issue vague affirmations. When heaven speaks over your life, it's not motivational fluff. It's a royal decree. He didn't say, maybe you'll be blessed. He said, you are blessed. He didn't suggest that you might rise. He declared, you are the head and not the tail. He didn't wonder if you could lend to many. He said you will. These aren't metaphors. They are spiritual laws written into your destiny. Laws that don't bend to the economy. Laws that don't yield to generational trauma. Laws that don't flinch in the face of your past. And yet, too many treat God's word like a fragile hope, as if the outcome still depends on how good they behave, how perfect they pray, or how hard they hustle. But listen to me. The power of God's promises doesn't rest on your performance. It rests on his nature. He is not a man that he should lie. He is not a politician that he should manipulate. When he speaks, the universe reshapes itself to obey. And when he speaks over you, heaven, earth, and even hell are forced to listen. So why are you shrinking beneath circumstances? Why are you negotiating with fear? Why are you begging for what has already been signed, sealed, and delivered by the blood of the Lamb? This is not arrogance. This is alignment. To believe less than what God says about you is not humility. It's rebellion against your original design. Let that sink in. You were never meant to beg heaven for what already belongs to you. You were meant to enforce what heaven has declared. When you pray, you're not pleading like a pauper. You're legislating like royalty. Because the king has spoken. And when the king speaks, the courtroom of creation responds. You were never meant to sit under the table, hoping something falls your way. You were never meant to hustle for crumbs when the banquet was always yours. Yet for far too long, you've lived like a spiritual orphan, begging for breakthrough, negotiating for peace, whispering prayers with more fear than faith. Let me speak this plainly. You are not a beggar in the kingdom. You are an heir. An heir doesn't plead for what's already in the will. An heir stands, walks into the house, opens the door and receives, because it's theirs by birthright. But the enemy has done a masterful job at blinding God's children to their own inheritance. He doesn't need to steal your calling if he can convince you you're not worthy of it. He doesn't need to destroy your future if he can get you to live beneath it. So here's the truth. You've been adopted into royalty. Not just spiritually, not just metaphorically, literally. You are co-heir with Christ. You share in his victory, his authority, and his access. And that access doesn't activate when you die. It activates when you believe. But belief is a battleground. And the most dangerous place to be is not in sin. It's in spiritual amnesia. Forgetting who you are. Forgetting what's been paid for. Forgetting what you carry. You're not here to survive this life. You're here to rule in the territory God assigned to you. To take up space. To declare with boldness. To step into rooms not with intimidation, but with quiet, divine confidence that says, this land is already mine. Enough of shrinking. Enough of apologizing for your presence. Enough of explaining your anointing to people who were never called to understand it. You don't owe the world an explanation for your favor. You owe God your obedience. Are you ready to rise like the heir you were born to be? There's a lie dressed in religion that has deceived generations. That God only blesses the exhausted. That you must earn every breakthrough. That divine favor is a paycheck for perfect behavior. And so you grind. You strive. You perform. Not because you're evil, but because you were trained to believe that being tired equals being faithful. But here's the truth no one ever told you in Sunday school. God doesn't reward exhaustion. He responds to alignment. You weren't created to live by the sweat of your brow. That was part of the curse, not the blessing. Before sin ever entered the world, Adam was placed in a garden of provision, not a factory of performance. He didn't wake up each day trying to earn his worth. He lived in rhythm with the voice of his creator. And from that rhythm came fruit. Effortless, abundant, and holy. That rhythm still exists. But most believers are deaf to it because they've been baptized into hustle culture dressed as holiness. They equate burnout with obedience. They mistake anxiety for spiritual alertness. They confuse busyness with productivity. And forget that Jesus often walked away from crowds to pray, while we run toward them to prove. Here's the radical truth. The favor of God cannot be earned. Not by fasting more. Not by praying louder. Not by sacrificing your peace on the altar of religious performance. Favor is inherited. It flows through relationship, not resume. And the ones who walk in it, they're not the loudest. They're the most aligned. They know when to speak. They know when to rest. They know that the doors they're called to walk through don't need to be forced open. They'll open when their spirit gets into position. This is the unforced rhythm of grace. This is what you were made for, and it's calling you home. You've strived long enough. Now it's time to inherit. You've been taught to weigh miracles on human scales, to do the math before you trust, to calculate your future based on your paycheck, your credit score, your resume. But heaven doesn't function in formulas. It moves in faith. You've looked at your life through the lens of what you see: bills, deadlines, responsibilities stacked like bricks. And quietly you concluded, there's no way out of this. But let me say what no one else has dared to. Your situation is not your source. God never needed a forecast to release favor. He doesn't check economic indicators before deciding how to bless you. When he parted the Red Sea, he didn't run a feasibility study. When he fed thousands with 5 loaves and 2 fish, he didn't ask if there was enough. He just moved because faith was present, and he's waiting to move again. The problem isn't heaven's capacity. It's our expectation. You've been praying like a believer, but planning like a pessimist. Speaking abundance while preparing for lack. Declaring open doors, but secretly bracing for rejection. You don't need more faith. You need cleaner faith. Faith without contamination. Faith not diluted by statistics or timelines or trauma masquerading as logic. The kingdom is not a market. It's not a stock chart. It's not a vending machine that releases blessing after enough effort is inserted. The kingdom is a river, and it flows to those who stop trying to engineer the impossible and instead step into it. So don't ask how. Don't ask when. Just move. Because when you stop measuring the promise by your strength and start measuring it by his voice, you'll walk on water without even realizing your feet left the ground. Look around. Nature never forces. The sun doesn't rush to rise. The rivers don't compete to reach the sea. The trees don't panic about growing. They simply respond to light. But you've been forcing everything. Pushing when you should be flowing. Striving where you should be still. Trying to manufacture momentum when all along you were designed to move in rhythm with something greater. You've mistaken movement for progress. Hustle for purpose. Noise for growth. But heaven has never operated through chaos. And what if the doors aren't stuck? What if they're just not aligned with the season you're in? What if your frustration is not a sign to push harder, but a whisper to pause, to recalibrate, to return to the current? Because divine momentum is never frantic. It doesn't demand. It draws. It pulls you like gravity. Quiet, invisible, irresistible. But it only flows when you're willing to stop forcing and start listening. Peter didn't walk on water by analyzing the waves. He moved in a single step because a voice said, "Come." And the moment he shifted his focus from communion to calculation, he began to sink. That's where many are now, half-sinking believers. Spiritually exhausted not from the storm, but from fighting against a flow they were meant to surrender to. You don't need more strength. You need more alignment. Because when you find the rhythm of grace, effort becomes overflow. And what once required all your might will move with you like a river that knows exactly where it's going. Everyone wants to shine. No one wants the pressure. They want the breakthrough without the breaking, the crown without the crushing. But God's most radiant work is never done in public. It begins in hidden places, under pressure, in silence, in darkness. A diamond isn't made in applause. It's made beneath the earth, where no one is watching. Just pressure, time, and a refusal to quit. And here you are, still buried, still unseen, still wondering if the silence means you've been forgotten. But no, this silence is sacred. This weight is womb, not grave. And the darkness you're in, it's not a tomb. It's an incubator. God hides what he values. He conceals what still needs shaping. You are not being punished. You're being prepared. Because public calling without private crushing creates empty vessels. Shiny but shallow. Think of Joseph. The dreamer turned slave, turned prisoner. Every coat he lost was protection. Every betrayal was precision. Every delay was design. Because the palace can't sustain you if the pit has matured you. And favor that comes too soon becomes a curse. So God buries you, not to abandon, but to refine. Not to silence, but to fortify. But here's the catch. Many walk away before the diamond forms. They dig themselves out just before the pressure finishes its work. They trade becoming for escaping. Don't do that. Don't curse the process. Don't pray away the pressure. Bless it, because the fire that's around you now is not here to consume you. It's here to reveal the brilliance no one saw coming. The kind of brilliance that cannot be shaken. That's what he's forming in you. The battle is never won on the battlefield. It's won long before in the shadows, when no one is watching, clapping, or even caring. Victory isn't forged in the roar of crowds. It's born in the quiet obedience no one sees. You think David defeated Goliath in front of Israel? No. That giant fell in a field years earlier. When a boy with no crown learned to sling stones at lions in the dark, when no one noticed, when no one validated him, when the only audience was God. By the time David stood before Goliath, he had already killed everything that could have killed him internally. Fear, doubt, insecurity, rejection. So when Goliath roared, David didn't flinch, because his confidence wasn't born on the battlefield. It was born in the lonely victories, the kind that don't trend, don't go viral, don't get applause, but build altars inside you that hell can't touch. That's where true warriors are made. In the midnight wrestlings, in the prayers that echo back silence, in the tears cried into pillows you never told anyone about, in the yes you give God when it would be easier to walk away, because private integrity will always sustain what public influence cannot. Everyone wants a platform. Few want the preparation, but only one of those two is eternal. So the next time you feel overlooked, hidden, or buried, don't panic. Don't rush the unveiling. Build, sharpen, obey, die to what you thought it would look like. Because when the moment comes, you won't need to prove anything. You'll just stand, fully formed, fully ready, fully forged by fire. And what was won in silence will speak louder than 1,000 microphones ever could. You keep asking, God, when will I get there? But what if I told you, you're already on holy ground? The wilderness isn't the delay, it's the design. The place that strips away the noise, burns off the excess, and leaves only what cannot be shaken. You thought the dry season meant you were off course, but this barren place, it's not proof of divine silence. It's proof of divine strategy. And that's what you've been building. Not a platform, not a brand, not applause, but a life so deeply anchored in what heaven declared, that when everything else falls, you remain not untouched, but unshaken, not perfect, but unmovable, because you learned that obedience was louder than strategy. That stillness was sometimes more powerful than motion. That presence carried more weight than presence of mind. Now the storm clears, not because it gave up, but because it couldn't move you. And in the silence that follows, God doesn't need to shout. He just points to you, to the fruit, to the legacy now breaking ground for your obedience, to the people healed by your yes, to the generations covered by your sacrifice, to the doors that stayed closed just long enough to open in the exact right season. He points, and the glory speaks. Not the glory that craves lights or limelight, but the kind that hovers, holy, heavy, undeniable, the kind that reminds hell it failed. That reminds you it was worth it. That marks a place in spirit and says, here, right here, someone believed me enough to finish. This is that moment, the turning, the shift, the unveiling of everything you carried, cried for, bled over, and almost gave up on. But you didn't. And now the floodgates break, and the glory won't whisper. It will roar. It was never about surviving the storm. It was about what you would become on the other side of it. You weren't being tested for punishment. You were being trusted for weight. The kind of weight that can't be carried by charisma. The kind of weight that can't be rushed, bought, or borrowed. The kind of weight that is only formed in fire and proven in silence. And now, the dust begins to settle. Not because everything makes sense, but because something inside you has stopped needing it to. You're not asking for signs anymore. You become the sign. A walking testimony of what endurance looks like when it's baptized in oil. You carry the scent of surrender, the residue of wrestling, and a fire that didn't consume you. It crowned you. Now the wind slows, the noise fades, and you don't need to raise your voice to explain how you made it. The evidence is alive in your presence. The silence that once tormented you is now the stage where God's glory hovers, because he doesn't always announce what he's about to do. Sometimes he just reveals what couldn't be hidden anymore. You, whole, changed, weighted with presence, not chasing moments, but carrying eternity. So let the doubters watch. Let the critics whisper. Let the world speculate. You don't have to say a word. Just stand. Just breathe. Let the oil shine through your scars. Let the glory speak. Because those who are marked in secret will always be revealed in power. If your spirit is still trembling, it's because something eternal just cracked open inside you. This wasn't just a message. It wasn't just inspiration. This was a divine interruption. A holy collision between your present and your calling. And whether you realize it or not, you just cross a line that can't be uncrossed. You can't go back to ordinary after this. You can't return to survival after hearing destiny roar. You can't unhear what heaven whispered into your bloodstream. Because when truth hits you like this, it doesn't knock, it breaks chains. It confronts everything small you believed about yourself and dares you to step out of the grave you called normal. And now, it's on you, not to perform, not to strive, but to say one word with your entire being. Yes. Yes to the mantle. Yes to the weight. Yes to the process. Yes to the God who refuses to let you shrink into safety. You don't need all the answers. You don't need every step mapped out. You just need courage for the next step. That's where glory lives, in the space between your obedience and his outcome. So if this word found you, it's because heaven was already moving toward you. And now you've seen too much, heard too much, felt too much to ever pretend this was just another video. It wasn't. This was heaven placing keys in your hands. What you unlock next is not up to me. It's up to what you do with what was just unlocked in you. So pause, breathe. Let the silence after this moment be holy, because you've just been marked, not for performance, but for presence, not for fame, but for fire, not for noise, but for glory. And now, the real journey begins.